I never planned to keep my success a secret from my husband's family. That choice was made for me the first time I met my mother-in-law, Diana Sterling, at their sprawling mansion in Newport Beach. I'd driven there in my old Honda Civic, wearing a simple sundress from Target, holding a homemade apple pie. Looking back, I should have known from her expression, that slight curl of her lip, the dismissive once-over, exactly what kind of woman she was. So this is the girlfriend Thomas won't stop talking about, she'd said, emphasizing girlfriend like it was a dirty word. I must say, when he mentioned you were a business major, I expected someone more polished. I'd smiled politely, used to people underestimating me. At 25, with my petite frame and casual style, I didn't look like your typical CEO. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Sterling. Tom's told me so much about you. She barely touched the pie, setting it aside with 2 fingers like it might bite. Has he told you about our family status in Newport Beach? The Sterling name carries certain expectations we don't usually associate with. She paused, eyes lingering on my modest dress. People from your background. If she'd known then that I was Lauren Chen, founder and CEO of TechFin Solutions, one of the fastest-growing financial technology companies in California, she might have changed her tune. But Tom had fallen in love with me, believing I was just a mid-level manager, and I'd wanted to keep it that way until I knew his love was genuine. Mother, Tom had interrupted, appearing in the doorway. Please don't start. But Diana Sterling was just getting warmed up. That first meeting set the tone for what would become 2 years of subtle jabs, backhanded compliments, and increasingly bold attempts to break us up. When Tom proposed 6 months later, Diana's campaign against me intensified. Darling, she'd cornered me at the engagement party she'd grudgingly thrown, champagne glass in hand. I assume you'll be signing the prenup? We can't have gold diggers trying to claim the Sterling fortune. I'd signed it without hesitation, much to her surprise. Let her think I was after their money. It was easier than explaining that my net worth was triple theirs. The wedding was a lavish affair, planned entirely by Diana to showcase the Sterling family's wealth. I let her have her way, watching with quiet amusement as she spent thousands on flowers and ice sculptures, insisting on showing everyone that even her son's unfortunate choice of bride wouldn't prevent her from throwing the society event of the season. It was after the honeymoon that things really took a turn. Since you're not working anymore, Diana announced one morning, showing up unannounced at our new house, which she'd insisted we buy in her neighborhood. You'll be expected to maintain certain standards as a Sterling wife. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been secretly reviewing quarterly reports. I'm still working, Mrs. Sterling. She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. Oh, darling, surely you don't think Tom actually wants his wife working some little office job. Sterling wives don't work. They manage the household, organize charity events, and most importantly, her eyes narrowed. They know their place. What followed was a detailed list of my new duties, everything from hosting dinner parties to joining the right country club committees. When I tried to protest, she dropped her bomb. Thomas agrees with me completely. Don't you, darling? Tom, who'd just walked in, looked uncomfortable but nodded. Mother knows best about these things, Lauren. It's tradition. And so began my double life. To my mother-in-law's satisfaction, I appeared to quit my job. In reality, I continued running my company remotely, scheduling video calls during her precious charity meetings and reviewing contracts while she thought I was at yoga classes. Diana's demands grew more outrageous by the day. She'd show up unannounced, inspecting the house with white gloves, criticizing everything from the way I folded towels to how I arranged flowers. If you can't afford a proper housekeeper, she'd sniff. You'll have to learn to do things correctly yourself. Tom, caught between his controlling mother and his wife, tried to play peacemaker. She means well, he'd say after particularly harsh criticism. She just wants what's best for us. But even he seemed shocked when Diana announced she was moving in temporarily to properly train me in being a sterling wife. The help these days is so unreliable, she declared, directing movers with her precious antiques. And since Lauren insists on playing housewife herself, she clearly needs guidance. That first week was hell. Diana criticized my cooking. Too ethnic. My cleaning. Didn't your mother teach you anything? And even the way I spoke. Sterling wives don't use contractions, dear. The breaking point came during a dinner party she insisted on hosting at our house. I'd spent days preparing, following her exacting standards, only to have her announce to her society friends, "You'll have to forgive the amateur presentation. My daughter-in-law comes from simpler stock. We're trying to civilize her, but you know what they say about silk purses and so's ears." The table tittered with polite laughter. Tom shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. I smiled serenely, excused myself, and went to my home office. It was time to make a call. You see, what Diana didn't know was that 6 months ago, my company had secretly begun buying shares in Sterling Industries, the family company that her husband, Tom's father, had run into the ground. Their financial troubles were well hidden from Newport society, but not from someone with my resources. I picked up my phone and dialed my CFO. "Sarah, it's time. Execute Operation Sterling." The next morning, as Diana was instructing me on the proper way to arrange breakfast pastries, her phone rang. The color drained from her face as she listened. "What do you mean? Hostile takeover?" she shrieked. "Who? How dare they?" I calmly sipped my coffee, watching her world crumble. Within hours, the news would break that Sterling Industries had been acquired by TechFin Solutions. The stock they'd been desperately propping up would plummet, and their carefully hidden financial house of cards would collapse. But that was just the beginning of my revenge. That afternoon, chaos erupted at our house. Robert Sterling, Tom's father, burst through the door, his usually perfectly styled hair disheveled, his designer suit wrinkled. "Diana," he shouted, waving his phone. "Have you seen the news? We're ruined." Diana was still pacing the kitchen, making frantic calls to their financial advisor. She whirled on her husband, face contorted with rage. "How could you let this happen? All our money, our status, our reputation." I continued preparing lunch as if nothing was happening, hiding my smile as I sliced vegetables for a salad. The CEO of TechFin Solutions, Robert, collapsed into a chair, loosening his tie. "They've been planning this for months, buying shares through shell companies, waiting until we were vulnerable, but no one knows who they are. This mysterious L. Chen." I chose that moment to speak up. "Actually, it's Lauren Chen." The kitchen fell silent. Diana and Robert stared at me, uncomprehending. "What did you say?" Diana whispered. "Lauren Chen, CEO and founder of TechFin Solutions." I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel, one Diana had criticized for not being Egyptian cotton. "That's me." The silence stretched for another moment before Diana let out a harsh laugh. "Don't be ridiculous. You're just a gold digger who got lucky with my son. You can barely organize a dinner party, let alone run a company." That's when Tom walked in, carrying a thick folder. His face was pale, but his eyes held a new understanding. She's telling the truth, Mother. I just came from the office. Lauren Chen has been on Forbes 30 under 30 list. TechFin Solutions is worth billions. That's impossible. Diana shrieked. She drives a Honda. She shops at Target. She makes her own pie. Yes, I said calmly. I do all those things. Because unlike some people, I don't measure worth by designer labels or family names. I built my company from nothing, working 18-hour days, while putting myself through college. I earned everything I have. Robert's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. Why? Why would you hide this? Why would you pretend to be ordinary? Because I wanted Tom to love me for who I am, not my bank account. I turned to my husband, heart racing. This was the moment I'd been dreading. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, Tom. I was going to, but then I met your mother, and I saw how she treated people she thought were beneath her. I wanted to know if you were different. Tom was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. Then, to my surprise, he started laughing. This explains so much. The mysterious work calls, the yoga classes that left you energized instead of tired, how you never seemed bothered by Mother's comments about money. Thomas, Diana screeched. This is not funny. She's destroyed us. No, Mother. Tom's voice turned stern. You destroyed yourself. With your prejudice, your cruelty, your obsession with status. Lauren just exposed what was already rotten. Diana crumpled into a chair, her perfect makeup streaking with tears. What will people say? What will happen to us? That depends, I said, pulling out my laptop. I have a proposal. I opened a document and turned the screen toward them. Sterling Industries can be saved, but there need to be changes. First, Robert steps down as CEO. The company will be restructured under TechFin's umbrella, with new management and transparency measures. Robert nodded numbly, knowing he had no choice. Second, I continued, the Sterling Foundation's charitable works will be audited and reformed. No more using it as a personal slush fund, Diana. Real charity, helping real people. Diana flinched but didn't argue. Third, and most importantly, you both will attend weekly therapy sessions to address your classist behavior and family dynamics. If you want to maintain any relationship with your son and access to your remaining assets, you'll learn to treat people with respect, regardless of their perceived social status. And if we refuse, Diana's voice was barely a whisper. Then the merger proceeds as planned. Sterling Industries is dissolved, and you lose everything except what's in your prenup. Mother, Tom answered for me. I suggest you take the deal. Watching Diana and Robert sign the agreement was deeply satisfying, but not as satisfying as what came next. 2 weeks later, at the first charity gala after the takeover, Diana had to stand beside me as I was introduced as the CEO of TechFin Solutions and the new chairwoman of the merged companies. The whispers and stares from her society friends were delicious. But you always said your daughter-in-law was a simple housewife. Mrs. Vanderton commented loudly. Didn't you make her work as your maid? Diana's face flamed red. I may have misunderstood some things. Some things. Tom joined us, putting his arm around my waist. Mother, why don't you tell them about Lauren's latest acquisition? Or her plans to establish a scholarship foundation for underprivileged students? Over the next year, things changed dramatically. Robert, freed from the pressure of maintaining appearances, actually thrived in his new advisory role. The company's ethical reforms An innovative direction under my leadership made it more profitable than ever. Diana's transformation was slower, but perhaps more meaningful. The therapy sessions revealed deep insecurities about her own humble beginnings. She'd come from a middle-class family and had spent her life overcompensating. Gradually, she learned to value people for who they were, not what they owned. One morning, she showed up at our door holding a pie. "I made it myself," she said hesitantly. "The therapist suggested I try doing things I used to criticize you for. It's probably not as good as yours." "It looks perfect," I said, letting her in. "Would you like to stay for coffee?" She paused in the doorway. "Lauren, I'm sorry. For everything." "I know," I smiled. "That's why I'm going to teach you my secret apple pie recipe." Tom found us in the kitchen hours later, covered in flour and laughing as Diana tried to crimp the edges of her second attempt. "I don't deserve this kindness," she said suddenly, becoming serious. "Everyone deserves a second chance," I replied. "Even sterling wives who don't use contractions." She laughed at that, a real laugh, not the society titter she perfected over the years. Later that night, as Tom and I got ready for bed, he asked, "Do you regret any of it? Hiding who you were, letting Mother treat you that way?" I thought about it. No, it taught me something important. True worth isn't in a bank account or a family name. It's in how you treat people, especially when you think they have nothing to offer you. "You're amazing," he said, pulling me close. "I'd love you if you were a billionaire or broke." "Good," I smiled, "because I'm about to spend a ridiculous amount of money on a new initiative to help women start their own businesses. Want to help?" "Always," he grinned. "But maybe we should get Mother involved too. She's got surprisingly good business instincts when she's not trying to maintain appearances." And that's how the Sterling Chen Women's Business Initiative was born, turning my revenge into something bigger than just teaching my mother-in-law a lesson. Now we help other women prove that you should never judge anyone by their cover or their choice of pie dish. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving people wrong, it's helping them become better.